All right, let's talk about the Wild West. When you picture a saloon girl, what comes to mind? Probably someone from a movie, right? Maybe a little glamorous, maybe a little tragic. Well, the reality was way more complicated, and honestly, a lot more interesting. You see, for most women on the American frontier, life was a set path. You were a wife, a mother, or a daughter, and your financial security was almost always in the hands of a man. But for a brave and unconventional few, becoming a saloon girl was a ticket to a different kind of life. It wasn't glamorous, far from it, but it offered something incredibly rare for the time, a degree of independence. These painted ladies, as they were called, were walking a tightrope of hardship and danger, but they were also true pioneers, writing their own rules in a world that didn't have many for women. So, the first big question was what they were doing even legal? The answer is, it's complicated. The Wild West was a patchwork of different rules, and it really depended on where you were. In many boom towns, the whole business was basically an open secret. It was less about morality and more about, well, money. Madams would often have to buy an expensive license to operate, which of course went straight into the town's coffers. In other places, they'd get hit with a regular fine, which was less of a punishment and more of a business tax. City leaders were happy to look the other way because these establishments were a huge part of the local economy. Now let's get one of the biggest myths out of the way right now. Not all saloon girls were prostitutes, not even close. In fact, a huge number of them were essentially hostesses and entertainers whose main job was to sell drinks, and they were good at it. A man might pay anywhere from a dime to $1 for a drink, and for every single one she sold, the saloon girl got a commission. Think of them as the original influencers, getting patrons to spend money. A really popular girl could pull in the equivalent of over $150 a week in today's money. A pretty incredible wage for the time. You might also be surprised to hear that, for the most part, the male patrons treated these women with a certain kind of respect. In a world where men outnumbered women, sometimes 10 to 1, female company was a rare and valuable commodity. And frankly, a woman's low social standing made her more approachable than the so-called proper ladies of the town. Plus, the saloon owners protected their investment. Any man who got rough with one of the girls would be thrown out on his ear and never allowed back. So, what did a saloon girl actually do all night? Well, they wore a lot of different hats. Their job was to create a fun, lively atmosphere. They'd chat with lonely miners, sing songs, play the piano, and dance. Make no mistake, there were women who sold sex. They were often called soiled doves or shady ladies, and they might work in the same saloon. But it was a different job description. The saloon girl's primary role was companionship and entertainment. Of course, let's not romanticize this. The job was incredibly dangerous. A saloon was a tinderbox of alcohol, firearms, and bruised egos. Fights over a girl's attention could turn deadly in an instant. And beyond the violence, the clock was always ticking. A woman's career depended on her youth and looks, and it was unforgivingly short. Once she was considered too old, she was often left with nothing, and many met tragic ends through poverty, illness, or addiction. Naturally, a profession this scandalous needed its own secret language. People came up with all sorts of colorful euphemisms. Sex workers were called everything from frail sisters to sporting women, and the famous term painted ladies. That came from their use of makeup. In an era where a respectable woman wouldn't dare use rouge, these women wore it proudly. It was a code, a way for people to talk about the business without really talking about it. Their fashion sense was just as rebellious. While Victorian style was all about being buttoned up and modest, the saloon girl's wardrobe was designed to do one thing: get noticed. They turned corsets into outerwear, hiked up their hemlines to show off a bit of ankle, and wore flashy, brightly colored stockings. They weren't just breaking the rules, they were rewriting the fashion playbook to catch a customer's eye. And here's where the saloon owners got really clever. A key part of the job was getting men to buy drinks, not just for themselves, but for their female companions. But an entire staff of drunk women isn't great for business, so they ran a brilliant little scam. When a cowboy ordered a shot of whiskey for his favorite girl, the bartender would often pour her a glass of cold tea or colored water. The girl stayed sober, the customer was happy, and the saloon's cash register kept ringing. Then came the next big thing: the dance hall. Here, the business model was even more direct. A man would buy a ticket, maybe for $1, which was good for one dance with a hostess. For every ticket she collected, the woman got a cut, on top of her commission, from any drinks she sold. A popular dancer could make a fortune. Some earned more in a week than a laborer made in a month. But here's the catch for the saloon owner. Every lonely bachelor was a potential husband. With so few women around, they lived in constant fear of their star employees falling in love and leaving. To prevent this, many owners had a strict rule: no customer could spend too much time with any one girl. It was a brilliant, if cynical, business strategy to stop attachments from forming. But for all the money and excitement, there was a dark side. Women in the sex trade were often shunned by respectable society and labeled fallen women. But you have to understand, for many of them, this wasn't a moral choice. It was a question of survival. For a widow, an orphan, or a woman abandoned by her husband, it was often the only thing standing between her and starvation. And not all sex work was created equal. A woman working on the street was incredibly vulnerable. The much safer option was an organized brothel, often in the town's red light district. There, a madam provided room, board, and protection from bouncers. It was a dangerous life, but these establishments offered a stability that was impossible to find on your own. Ultimately, the entire world of the saloon girl only makes sense when you look at one staggering fact: the massive gender imbalance. The West was settled by waves of single men looking for gold and opportunity. In some towns, the ratio was literally 10 men for every one woman. It all came down to basic supply and demand. This simple fact gave a small number of women a unique and powerful position, allowing them to build lives for themselves in a world that wasn't built for them. So there you have it. It was a world of incredible risk, but also incredible opportunity. Far more than just a movie trope, the real saloon girls were complex, resilient women who played a vital and often overlooked role in shaping the American West. Thanks for watching. If you found that as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more, and tell me what you think in the comments below.